Good morning, my creative friends. Dr. Minette Riordan here. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. It is Wednesday morning. What is the date today? July 19th. It's my brother's birthday, so happy birthday to my brother today. So, if you are brand new to Painting in Your PJs, thanks for stopping by and having a play along with us here on this channel. So the intention behind Painting in Your PJs Live with Minette is to really create a space for artful play and finding the joy in creative process as a tool for personal discovery and growth. I find that making art is such a powerful teacher. It shows me where my fears are, where my resistance is, and helps me understand where the inner critic gets in my way. So there's a lot of, different ways that we can use our creative practice. I'm just trying to get my technology all set up here. This little box is kind of small. Good morning, Tori. Great to see you this morning. Been fun spending so much time with you online this week. Excuse me, my allergies have been crazy. It's been super windy the last couple of days. And so for me, painting in your PJs is really about using art as a personal practice. I often call this my morning meditation and art activation process or MAP process. And for me, when I made a very conscious decision to put art in the center of my life, everything changed. Eventually, it changed even the business that I was leading, but it changed how I prioritize time spent on what made me most happy. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, 5 years. Every morning is about art making. And I've already been up for a couple of hours. I did some reading this morning and some journaling. I'm working on a giant canvas right now. I worked on that this morning. So I love how my mornings are full of art, and it just starts my day off on the right tune, the right tone. So I love to encourage people to explore their relationship with art making. Why do you want to make art? What's the benefit that you get from making art? I consider any kind of creative expression to be a radical form of self-care. And what we're going to do over the next couple of days, good morning, Leslie. What we're going to do over the next couple of days is to work on a watercolor landscape inspired by a photograph that I took yesterday, and I'll show you the photograph in a minute. And I'm a little daunted and intimidated. Watercolor is not my primary go-to. I have a vision in my head of what I want this landscape to look like, and I don't know if it's going to work or not. And so it may take 2 days, it may take 3 days, I don't know. So I'm in it for the journey and the process, and thank you guys for being here with me along the way. And so I want to show you the picture and show you what my intention is for today. So my intention for today, let me go ahead and change my camera there. My intention for today is to play with color and to start swatching out the colors of my landscape. And I'm not always someone who takes a lot of time for this kind of preparation, but when I look at this photograph here that I want to use, it felt really important to spend a little time prepping colors ahead of time, maybe doing some thumbnail sketches, but I want to start with color. And I have an appointment that I have to drive to at 9 a.m. this morning. And so we're going to keep this episode to about 30 minutes so that I can. They are finicky and unpredictable, but I keep working on them too, Tori, because I love them. And I really love abstract landscape play. But this is, I'm going to move this journal out of the way here. So this is the photograph, and it's a really beautiful photograph. It has some nice contrast. It has quite a variety of greens. It has these little pops of this gorgeous sort of purpley pink color in these thistles, the gold of the sunflowers. We've got a variety of oranges and yellows and blues with a touch of gray. We have this sweet dark landscape line, and there's a little building there. I don't know that I'm going to keep the building, or from a composition perspective, I might move the building. It's kind of centered right smack in the middle of the page. And intentionally, when I was taking this photo, I was thinking about the rule of thirds, right? So it's an interesting composition because we're seeing a lot of the foreground, and you notice how much detail there is here in the foreground. You can't really see the individual grasses or the details of these trees along the line. So we have a lot of detail all the way to less and less detail, which really is what creates that perspective and the idea of distance in the photograph. There's a big thistle in here. So the vision in my head is to paint the background colors as close as possible, and then to come in with some black micron pens or other pens and to do some sketchy drawing of some of the detail over the top. I love the combination of watercolor and drawing. So we're going to experiment, and it might take me a couple of different tries to work on this. So I have this journal that I have been playing in quite a bit, doing all kinds of different things. I've been really playing with gouache. A friend of mine gifted me some gouache. You guys have seen some of these. I ended up loving these collage pages. And so I'm calling this kind of my experiment journal. This was interesting. So I tried doing some stenciling with the gouache, and when I painted the page on the back side, it got black all over this one. So just a lesson learned, right? I've been doing some messy different color wheels lately, and my friend Andrea taught me a quick way to draw a 12 section color wheel, which was like a lifesaver. We had so much fun. I love making tags, right? So just, this is my book that's all about experimentation. A couple of weeks ago, I took some pictures of my shadows. So I had fun playing with these shadows of myself walking and what those could look like. Messy mandala. So this is gouache underneath gesso. And I think this one feels like some kind of cool abstract landscape. So I have lots of things that I've started. These were, again, just experimenting with gouache and printing with leaves off a catalpa tree in my front yard. I didn't know what it was, but Allie Manning, when she was here, she's like, oh, that's a catalpa tree. So I did some printing on tissue and a layered collage. And then I actually glued the leaves in here because they were pretty. And I think it's valuable to have a journal that we're just playing in without any kind of, need to have it be perfect. When my friend Andrea Chevalier was here visiting, she brought me this stencil which fits perfectly into the size and dimension. This actually journal design is Andrea's living or your daily creative everything journal. She teaches this process in her Watch, Learn, Play class, and she had her husband make this stencil perfectly sized to fit in the journal, and she uses it for making calendars in her journal. But I love the size of these pages, and I love that she created this stencil to fit. I think these are for sale. It's got some paint on it, so it's not sitting still very well, and I think these are for sale, I would imagine, in her online store, a workofheartstudio.com, a workofheartstudio.com. And she is in the middle of a super fun Living in Your Journal challenge where she is showing how she uses her journal. She has a very different style and a very different morning practice than I do, but I love that we both have this similar commitment to our morning practice. We're both lovers of the artist way, and for both of us, that evolved into something unique to ourselves that included both writing and drawing. Making sure I get, so I'm drawing all these squares on the page. I know it's not that exciting to watch, but I'm going to use this for my watercolor swatching. This is just plain mixed media, Canson mixed media paper. When I get to do the actual painting, I am probably going to do that not in a journal, but on an actual sheet of watercolor paper. But I needed a place to just play with some colors. And I'm using Daniel Smith watercolors. I have a very messy, all of a sudden my nose is running. Sorry about that. I have a very messy palette here. I may wish I had a cleaner palette. I have my photograph here, which is my guide for color swatching, and I have a huge variety of colors of Daniel Smith paints. And as I'm looking at this, I'm going, what do I have that I could use that is a little bit cleaner? Let me see what I got here. Bear with me for just a minute. So my mom gifted me, she's so organized. She's an amazing artist, but this watercolor set, and she has all the colors in the set labeled. So these kind of containers for your watercolors are fabulous. Ah, that one's much cleaner. So this is also just another watercolor palette that's great for storing and mixing your watercolors. That has some great colors in it as well. But this palette is a lot cleaner. So I think maybe, I don't know, I'm probably going to end up playing with all of them. And I'm going to grab a small brush, I'm going to grab some water, and I'm going to start with my yellows and oranges. And so this is probably a Hansa yellow. And look at that, it's a gorgeous sunflower yellow. And when you're swatching with watercolors, it's always really nice to just sort of, continue to add water and see where you can get to, right? How pale it is. It's interesting. It looks almost neon on the, let me see if I can yellow up that light a little bit. How interesting. It's not, it's actually a kind of a beautiful mustard yellow, but it's not quite orangey enough for the sunflowers, and it's definitely not orangey enough, for the sky, but it's probably a really good basis. So I want to work on that sunflower color just a little bit. And I want to talk while I'm doing this about this idea of finding the joy in preparation. You guys know that I'm a pretty intuitive painter, and I really love, okay, that's closer to the sky. Maybe it still needs a little bit more yellow for our sunflowers. I love intuitive painting. I love just diving in to the process. But what I've noticed is when I have a vision in my head for something that I want to create, that sometimes it takes a little more preparation, and I need to just slow, and this is a pyrrole red, I need to slow my process down a little bit. That's a little more red, but maybe there's some in here, right? See, it feels a little bit red there. I need to slow myself down and find the joy in the preparation. And when we can find joy in that's better, in the preparation, our ultimate art piece will be more pleasing to the eye. When we take the time to swatch the colors, when we take the time to really practice and decide what we want to do. Like I am working on ideas for a commission. Good morning, Blanca. Piece right now, and I find commissions really, really challenging. And stressful, and I'm only doing this one because it's for a dear friend. So I've got some interesting mixes going on here, from that pure bright yellow to a little bit of that darker orange and some medium oranges. And I'm actually really liking the blend of this Hansa yellow and the Pyrrole red, and I want to be able to remember what those colors are. So I'm going to come in with my pencil. If I can find it again. Okay, I just had that pencil. There it is. Everything hides along the edges, right? It just rolls a little bit. So I believe this is Hansa Yellow Medium from Daniel Smith, one of my favorites. Hansa Yellow Medium plus the Pyrrole Red. And this will help me remember when I get ready to come back and actually paint this piece, what the colors are and the color, I can see the color combinations, right? But I want to be able to, and I didn't, it's not like I was trying to mix enough to be able to paint a painting, but I want to just be able to play and see. And I used to get so frustrated by color swatching. I thought it was boring. I thought it was a waste of time. I didn't really love making color wheels. And what I'm learning is that the more that I'm willing to be patient and spend time here in this type of creative play, then the easier things get, the better my art looks. I also have some interesting, almost sort of ochre colors. You know, they're a little off-white, almost kind of a tighteny buff. So I'm going to see, I don't even know what this color is, but let's get this color down and see what it looks like. So it's a little bit of ochre, and up here I have maybe a little more goldy sienna color. Should have got my spray bottle too. Okay. Interesting. Dried, that one looks different, but it's really coming out kind of the same. So this one's giving me a little bit, and I'll have to go dig through my colors and see what I put in here. A little bit more of the ochre color. And what happens if I mix just a little bit of yellow with that ochre? Still working with that same yellow because that's the one I have in front of me. And I'm wondering if I want to come in maybe with just a little more of a sienna or an umber and get even a little bit more of those gold. And the interesting thing about watercolor, you can use white watercolor paint. And in the watercolors my mom gave me, there is some white, which is interesting. But really, it's just about managing the amount of water you're using to get those colors. So when I'm looking at the colors in the background here, they're just a little bit of color mixed in with those greens. So I think this is an ochre, but I'm not really sure. Oh, maybe it's the Naples yellow. Let's see. Ah, yes, so this is the Naples yellow. Good to remember. So I'm just going to come in and label this one Naples yellow. And this one up here, I think was yellow ochre. So a little bit of yellow ochre. So I had a little bit of that Naples yellow and the yellow ochre, and they are kind of similar. There's not a lot of variation in the two, but already seeing where I'm getting some nice colors that are sort of lining up and reflecting this. Up here we have this really bright, bright white with these yellow rays. It'll be interesting to see how we can capture that in watercolor, or if we can, what I might discover is this painting might be much easier for me personally to attempt with watercolor. Who knows? All right, so I love these sort of blue gray up here of the sky. And so I've got a few different blues here. Actually, that one's pretty good. That looks like maybe an indigo. So that gets pretty darn close to Gosh, that's pretty. Gets really close, but this has just a little touch of red right in it. So it's not pure blue. So I'm wondering if I added just a little ultramarine, what might happen. So that gives me, because ultramarine has got that little bit of red in it, so that gives us some nice variations there in those blues that is going to help me create some of those darks and lights. So that one actually feels like it came along pretty quickly. So this was ultramarine blue, and let's see if we can figure out what that nice dark one is. I'm getting a nice collection of Daniel Smith. I tend to buy just a couple of tubes at a time. I don't buy a ton at a time, kind of as needed. All right, maybe that dark one is the Blue Apatite Genuine, I think is what that is. Sorry, those are fuzzy. And usually I can tell just by opening it. And I love the Daniel Smith, the colors that have apatite in them do this cool thing when they dry, they separate and you see different colors in them that are quite magical. Oops, I don't need my pencil. Okay, so I'm going to have to maybe do a little more exploration of these colors. So here's a slightly different one. And this one actually has a little green in it. So this may help me make some of these dark greens, but it's definitely not the color of my sky up there. And actually it may even feel closer to our tree line here, which is really interesting. Also just a gorgeous color. And by tomorrow I'll go back through my tubes of paint and really know what the names of all of these are. I definitely am finding out what my favorites. Andrea introduced me to Opera Pink, and Opera Pink has become just a real favorite. Okay, so I got to figure out what those darker blues are. I'm loving the color of this one as it dries. So again, I'm just noticing, right? I'm just noticing. And I do have a nice purple over here. But the thing about purple, I'm going to come back over here to this one. The thing about purple is you can mix a lot of different purples. You can make your own purples, or you can use a purple. So let's actually just put this one down. All right, so that is not the color of the thistles at all. When you see the thistles live and in person, I'm sure most of you have seen thistles, they're somewhere between that and this opera pink, right? This gorgeous opera pink, but they're not that pink either. Ah, it's so much fun, Tori. I love it. Um, and the opera pink and this pretty turquoise make a beautiful purple. See, this is why I haven't washed this palette off because it still has quite a bit of paint on it. So I end up having lots of different palettes floating around. So that opera pink and this turquoise end up making a gorgeous purple. And this to me is the color of my thistles. But I'm going to want that to have less water and be a little more, nope, that was too much blue. And you know when you're mixing colors, you always start with your lightest color and add tiny amounts of the dark to the light color. It's really hard when you've added too much dark to a color to go back the other direction. So start, like if you're making orange, you always start with the yellow and add just the tiniest bit of red at a time to get that color you want. So purples are the same way. So starting with the red and adding little tiny bits of blue. So I think between this opera pink and this nice turquoise, we're going to be able to get the color of the thistles here in our painting. So that feels pretty good. And I love how watercolors change when they dry. I love how they change when they dry. So I think this is probably a dioxazine purple. and a little bit of opera pink, and this is opera pink plus turquoise. And you can see when you look at this painting that the majority of what is going on here are so many different shades of green. And so I have a couple of shades of green, right, that are in the tubes that I'm going to start with, but I'm also going to want to mix some of these different shades of green. So there's some dark the grasses out here, there's a little pool of them that are a very blue green, like they have that phthalo look. Same here. The thistles also have a very blue green leaf. Sunflowers have a brighter green leaf. And then the grasses, there's just infinite varieties of greens. And notice how the greens in the foreground are darker and they get lighter and lighter as we retreat towards our horizon line. So I'm really looking at the photo at those gradients of color and how we get from here to here. And again, I'm just finding the joy in the process of preparation. This is inviting me to slow down my own creative practice and my desire to dive right in and to really look at the photo, to really look at what it is that I'm seeing and not to just dive in and go for it, right? So I'm having a lot of fun with this just simple swatching and looking here. So I am going to play here for a minute with some of the different greens that I have. I'm not going to remember all the names of these, so I'll have to look them up because I haven't labeled this tin. This was from one of Andrea and I's old retreats, maybe one of our Once Upon a Time retreats. And it was a favorite palette, and then as it's emptied, I've gone back and filled it up. I love these little tins for travel. So Andrea sells these little tins with the inserts so that you can make your own. Look at that pretty yellow green, but that's not really the color that I'm seeing over here, right? I'm not really seeing this yellow green, so this would have to have more blue added to it in order to get closer to the colors that I'm seeing on my palette. And it's this green over here. That might be the same green. So I've got some ultramarine blue on here. And look how all of a sudden we start to get that blue green, right? Which feels more like some of those grasses and some of that, you know, the, even the tree line is just a little bit green. It's a really dark green. It looks black, but it's not. This is one of the apatite. I think it's like green apple apatite or something. And you can start to see how those colors separate and they're pretty magical. But I'm still not quite getting the greens that I'm gonna need. So I'm gonna grab this big palette here. This is an interesting green. A much darker green. It looks kind of like it's got some of that phthalo in it. Normally I would spray my watercolors. Yeah, there it is. Oh yeah, that's good. Um, to activate them and use them, but I left my spray bottle over on my other table because we also use a spray bottle to keep the cats out of the art. And I got my big giant painting I'm working on, laid it down on the table this morning, all excited to work, and both the cats came and laid down like right in front of me where I was getting ready to paint. They're like, "What you doing, Mom?" I don't know what it is they love about lying on the canvas. Okay, so this is a really nice green, but what I'm missing is kind of a grassy, just sort of more of a, excuse me, I'm gonna mute myself for a second here. Apologies for that. Is kind of these grassier greens that are in the center here. So I know I'm going to want to not stick my paintbrush in my water bottle that I'm drinking. So maybe we're going to figure out how can we, so that made it a little more brown. Yeah, but that's actually closer. So I took that sort of olive green and just added a little bit of turquoise to it, and that's a pretty green. And this page is making me happy. I know, right? They just need their own canvas to lie on. And I have blankets and I have beds and I have all the things and I have boxes because Georgia loves boxes, but it doesn't matter. They want to be up on the table with me. Okay, I'm loving these, really these darker greens. And maybe to get that brighter, we're going to add some, there's just a little bit of that Hansa yellow there. Still not getting quite that grassy green that I want. So we just have to keep playing with colors to find, there it is. There's that bright Kelly green. So that was Hansa yellow and a little bit of actually phthalo turquoise. And that is a lovely green. So that feels like it's getting me a lot closer to where I want to be for this piece. And you should see my table right now. What a messy stack of everything. Um, so this is green apatite genuine. This one and these couple I'm gonna have to look up. So this was the Hansa yellow plus turquoise. This was kind of all the colors mixed up. And let me see what that other nice green is here. This is a hooker's green. That was one I had from my mom. That's, I think, is a Winsor Newton one. But I can start to begin to see the colors where I'm going. And the next step of the process, I feel like I'm pretty good with my swatching here for the moment, and I got to go get myself ready to go to my appointment this morning. And for me, the next step of this is going to be to start to layer in the background colors of this painting and then decide how much detail am I going to do with paint and how much drawing do I want to do. So tomorrow we'll be looking at background layers. I'll be working on watercolor paper. Thank you, Tori. I know they come out so pretty. It's like making the color wheels too, right? They come out so pretty. And I'm curious what all these different greens are in here. Oh, this is green gold was what this one was. That really pretty bright one here is a green gold. I love that color. So a lot of different ways that we can mix and blend our own colors, and remember, learning to blend your own colors is how you start to curate that custom palette that always makes your work original, whether you're working in acrylic, with watercolor, or with any medium. When you get more confident with color mixing, then all of a sudden your work looks original and not like the colors are just coming right out of a tube. So I highly recommend taking some time to do some swatching. It's very relaxing. It's worth the time spent in preparation to create an original piece of art that feels, really unique and authentic to you. So that's it for me today. Super excited about this project. I will be live tomorrow and Friday because I want to get this project finished. And yeah, stay cool and hydrated. I think it's supposed to be a little cooler here today. My poor dad is really struggling in Texas with the heat, but definitely hydrated. So have a beautiful rest of your day. Go play with some color swatches, and I will see you all back here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Mountain Time. That is 7 a.m. Pacific and 10 a.m. over on the East Coast. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.